Bexar County is one of the fastest growing counties in the country, and that growth is raising questions we haven't had to answer before. How do the courts keep pace? How does healthcare reach the people who need it? Who's actually planning for what comes next? Ron Nirenberg describes it this way.
Growth is coming at us like a steam train, and there's no captain in the engine room.
Ron served as San Antonio's mayor from 2017 to 2025, 8 years that included a pandemic, a brutal winter storm, and constant tension with state leadership. Ron is now running for Bexar County Judge against the incumbent, Judge Peter Sakai. This conversation isn't about the campaign. It's about a question that matters whether you follow local politics or not. What does leadership at the county level actually require? And why should it matter to your everyday life? This is Big City, Small Town. Let's get into it.
Let's start with a question you're probably really tired of hearing or answering. People wonder if you decided to run for county judge against incumbent Judge Peter Sakai because a path to a federal appointment in Washington ended with the departure of President Biden and the loss of Kamala Harris to President Donald Trump. And perhaps because there was no clear path forward for you to pursue a state office like a run against Governor Abbott or another statewide elected office. Why are you running?
Sure. I think it's a fair question. There has been a lot of conversation, a lot of projections onto me and what I would do with my future. It deserved time and contemplation that I haven't had until I left office. My heart is still in public service. I still believe very strongly in the work that we've done for the last 12 years. I care deeply about this community. I never envisioned a life in politics. It was not a part of my life plan. But I fell in love with this place, and I want my son and his generation to do the same. My heart is still here, and there's a lot of work to do, Bob. There's a lot of work to do in this community to achieve the goals that we have for the future. Leaders have to deliver. It's not enough to have ambition. I have a record of delivering and a record of achievement in support of our community. And there are a number of key issues, difficult issues that we've been talking about for quite a while, many of which were campaigned on by Judge Sakai. Those issues are only deepening, getting worse in many cases. We have a lot of challenges to solve. And for all of our hopes and aspirations of changing the course of our state, fixing what's wrong, and the direction that we're going in this country, none of that matters if we can't get the issues solved in our own backyard. So that's why I'm running.
People who are asking that question, and particularly people active in Democratic Party politics, say they feel uncomfortable about this race. I've heard two kinds of observations along that line. One from voters going, I'm uncomfortable with having to choose between them. Then I've heard from business leaders and other political donors saying, I'm uncomfortable having to write a check or choose between them or even publicly state that I'm against Ron or against Peter. We are kind of a first name, city, big city, small town, right?
Yeah.
People I think they were caught off guard by this. They weren't expecting this. And there is a level of discomfort. How are you dealing with that when you're out there seeking either contributions or talking to people who raise that issue?
I think, number one, democracy is about having choices. And so it's not always about feeling comfortable. I think we should be a little bit more uncomfortable in our politics because I hope we have more quality candidates to choose from in the future. The truth of the matter is, Peter Sakai is an honest and decent man. He's a good man. I've admired his service to this community as a children's court judge, but that's not the role we're campaigning for. That's not the role either one of us is seeking. This is about our record, abilities, and skills, and I believe the record will show that I am suited for this job and to solve the challenges and to work with the community to prepare for the future. That's why the campaign has been going very well, and I'm looking forward to going on to the next phase, God willing, as people turn out to vote. Hopefully the work speaks for itself, but yes, you do need a campaign infrastructure, you need a team, you need a good plan. I think we have a good team and a good plan. We're executing, and we're raising funds to do it.
What are the issues?
Well, there are many. The first issue, I think, on most people's mind is public safety. We've got tremendous challenges within the justice system, operational bottlenecks and case backlogs that need to be solved. Those are a threat not only to the safety and well-being of people who serve in those positions, but it's also a threat to public safety. A month or so ago, we had a murderer out in the community, unbeknownst to anyone, for a couple of weeks because the data systems were in a state of chaos at the county. Those things need to get solved. We need some accountability. And it's not just one person's job. Yes, there's a whole chain of command. But at the end of the day, it's the county judge and the commissioner's court who decide the budget and resources of this entire county. So unless you have a county judge who's willing to get out in front of issues, take accountability, and say, we're going to solve these together as a team, you have no hope of solving issues. You really need collaboration and teamwork. You need a vision, and you need somebody who's willing to plant a flag in the ground and say, we're going to solve this on behalf of the public, so the public has someone to take and hold accountable. There's issues in public safety. There's also issues within our health system. I've spent most of my career working in housing and transportation reform and workforce and education initiatives, things I hope people remember and we get to talk about, even parts where I'm taking criticism for. I hope we get to talk about those because all of those were geared towards one principle, and that is it doesn't matter who you are and where you live in this city or in this region, you should be able to thrive. You should expect and receive quality of life through basic services and infrastructure. You should have access to quality employment with a good paying job. If you show that initiative so that you're not having to work several jobs to make ends meet, we need to work together as a community to solve the challenges of poverty, which remain at the watershed of so many other issues. We're dealing with economic opportunity and breaking cycles of poverty, which we have no problem talking about, but quite often stumble over ourselves trying to work on. The one area that has not been touched in that same regard is healthcare. That's the fourth pillar. Making sure that people have access to basic, essential healthcare is a critical component of being able to break a cycle of poverty. And right now in our community, despite the fact that we have one of the largest taxpayer-funded health systems in the state, our healthcare access gap is widening. We have the highest uninsured rate in the country, and we need to consider that as a priority alongside housing, workforce, education, and transportation reform.
Hard to know that you can do anything about that with the state resisting federal funds.
Fair enough. We're not the only person at the levers, but our control of the local situation is as strong as the state's over their portion of it, and we have significant assets in our community. University Health System, CareLink, Community First. We have a tremendous operation with the South Texas Medical Center and all the assets within our private medical institutions. You're telling me with everything that we have in this community, we can't figure out a way to serve low-income residents and everyone, frankly, to have access to basic health care so that residents aren't forced to use the ER, gumming up the operations and slowing down service and making it more costly for everyone. I think we can figure it out. I'm not saying I have all of the plans in place, but I'm saying we have the brain power, we have the assets in this community to figure that out. One other big issue we need to tackle is frankly just our preparedness. Growth is coming at us like a steam train and there's no captain in the engine room. We have no plan for growth in this community. We're one of the fastest growing counties in the country. It's creating challenges with infrastructure and services. We know municipalities have statutory restrictions. We know the tax code is changing, so it's reducing the municipalities have to deal with. We need to work collectively on a plan, not necessarily so we can change all of those factors, but so that we are ready for the future. I've been driving around the outskirts of this county for a while now, and I'm seeing things happen in real time that led to things like Camelot and Camelot 2 and the Glen. We have to do a better job preparing for the reality that people are moving out in the unincorporated area because they think it's cheaper, but it's also disconnecting them from the basic essentials to ensure that we're not having people live in colonias in Bexar County in 2026. I think we can do that. There's many other challenges, Bob. There's a breakdown in the elections department on voter registration. I would encourage everyone, since we're talking about elections, make sure, even if you've been voting in this county for 40 years, make sure you go check your voter registration because frankly, with the operational chaos that's happening between VR Solutions, which is the private company that the court has been trying to finalize, but it's stuck somewhere in the county bureaucracy, making sure that your voter registration is filed with the state so that you can count on going to the polls and being able to have your ballot count. For the last 3 years, those things have been talked about, but not addressed. I would say getting worse. And right now, we have no one accountable. And the county is structured in a very weird way, as Nelson would say. But what was different under Nelson Wolff is that you had someone there who had the fortitude and the willingness to get out front of issues, be creative as necessary, and say, it's on us to solve it and go solve it. Right now, you have no one accountable, and there's a lot of finger pointing and no progress being made.
Nelson was in the office, and of course, he was the former mayor of San Antonio from 89 to 93, term limited. He went a few years before running for office, and I think in 2002 or 3, somewhere around there, he became county judge and held it for 22 years.
Yeah.
And as strong as he was in that position, Ron, I think a lot of people would say he was not successful in fundamentally reorganizing the county bureaucracy. I wonder whether or not one of the reasons you're running is, do you believe that you can modernize that bureaucracy, put it more in sync with municipal government to realize some efficiencies and better productivity, or is that not particularly a realistic priority?
I would say productivity and performance are my chief goals. If county government was more logical for people to understand, including the people who are actually in there operating, perhaps it would be easier to achieve better outcomes. First and foremost, you need to have leadership that can bring people together, that can convene, that's willing to take risks, use political capital to say this is a community priority and build coalitions to go solve it with his or her colleagues on the court as well as in the public. That's what we're lacking. I want our county to work in sync with all the municipalities in our unincorporated area. Right now, they're rowing in opposite directions quite frequently. It's not just Bexar County. This is state statute. There's a lot of people at the controls of how county governments work in Texas, but I do think based on the way it's structured now, we need leadership capable of working in that system, collaborating with people, being out front of issues and solving them as a community. And that's what we're lacking. Certainly, if they're given the opportunity to improve and make more efficiencies, I'm going to do that. It's not my intent to make it look like the city, though.
One of the signature accomplishments of Judge Sakai was getting both Proposition A and Proposition B passed in our recent election, all related to significant long-term county investments on the east side where the Frost Arena is and the Freeman Coliseum and the surrounding properties, as well as the county's contribution to a new Spurs Arena downtown. Are you enthusiastic about, should you win, being the person who's going to be in charge of seeing that east side vision realized?
I am, and I would say this, Bob, it's great that we got to that outcome. The community needs to be involved every step of the way. We need to make sure that we're clear on where we stand. We are where we are, and I am extremely excited about the future for downtown and the east side. We need to make sure it's facilitated and completed the right way. Peter did not use an ounce of his political capital to get this across the finish line until about 2 weeks before the election. I'm grateful it did, but you will not see me as a silent partner in this process, especially as it relates to making sure that the community, particularly on the east side, is involved in determining the outcomes of what's happening in the economic development portion of the east side investment.
Question on Project Marvel. Wouldn't Judge Sakai say, yes, I did disagree with the Spurs on when they wanted to have the election. By taking more time, I was successful in putting together Proposition A and the investment in the east side that was implicitly promised in 1999 for the election and never happened with the building of the Frost.
Well, hold on a minute, Bob. Right now, the investment is with the Freeman grounds and the rodeo build-out. The implied promises of the late 90s and early 2000s with AT&T Center was the small business stimulus, the residential amenities, the housing, the quality of life improvements that would happen for East Side residents. There is no plan for that. And in fact, the committee that is working on it is under NDAs, his own citizens, handpicked to develop a plan. And so what I'm suggesting is that part of the process needs to be stewarded properly. Because if we don't get that part, Eastside residents get to self-determine the future of economic development that's using public dollars to incentivize. If they don't have an opportunity to help shape that and we deliver it in a way that keeps true to our promise as public servants, we will never get that opportunity again. It is almost miraculous that we do have that opportunity now. And so let's do it the right way. One of the first things I would do is make sure that the people that they elect constantly to be part of the process of representing them, namely Councilmember McHugh Rodriguez and Commissioner Calvert, need to be part of that process. And we need to make sure that residents have a voice in what happens outside of the rodeo.
We are in a curious position right now where those two elected officials are not central to the process, and it's creating some discord, particularly on the east side.
Yeah, and there's plenty of media on the fact that Jalen and I didn't always agree on everything. But I do agree that he has an important voice in this community. He has a seat at the table on behalf of his residents. And on that, we had a very strong relationship, and we will continue to do that. And I believe the same thing is true about Commissioner Calvert. We might not agree on everything all the time, but you have to respect the office and respect the people who put him there.
Dealing with the uncertainty at the federal level, I think we have the paradox of the Bexar County area experiencing a lot of excitement and growth with where the future is headed. But it seems like a threat to that, as we've seen this last year, is that federal uncertainty, whether that's increased immigration enforcement presence, the tariff battle that happened with our largest trading partner in Mexico and Canada, or as well, withholding of government funds, as we saw the largest government shutdown in history threatening essential services, San Antonio food banks. And so I'm curious, from your perspective, what do you see as the levers of control or influence that the county judge would have to help safeguard the Bexar County area from greater uncertainty and instability?
Sure. I really appreciate that question, because I think that is a very clear difference between me and Judge Sakai. The chief and most important role of a county judge is the fact that they are the only elected official with that authority, mainly the presiding officer of a commissioner's court overseeing all the county functions that represents 2.2 million residents. Having the voice and the platform of that position is extremely important to stand up for our priorities and our values. I did that as mayor. I will do that as county judge. I think that's important, number one, to establish where we stand, also to draw attention to the impacts of some of the things that are happening from the federal government, the drawdown of resources, militarization of an unaccountable paramilitary force and ICE, the challenges with respect to changes in tax law. So you will see me stand up for the values and to defend our local community as it relates to the fact that county government is a state an arm of the state statutorily. I understand that, but we are elected by citizens to represent us, and I will use that authority very judiciously.
I think Cory brings up a good point, and the word paradox is a smart one, because democracy is in danger at the federal level. I mean, it's just astonishing what we're watching every day. Are we really going to invade Greenland militarily and seize a sovereign state? But also, we have a very difficult relationship with elected officials in Austin, Ron, and the governor, the lieutenant governor, I would say now the House Speaker, and the legislature in general have been very ungenerous with us, attacking home rule the entire time you were mayor. We're sitting on a rainy day fund of $25 billion, as well as billions of unallocated resources from the last legislative session. Comparatively, the biggest state in the country, California, has $14 billion. Nobody has anywhere near the wealth or resources of Texas, and yet you see none of that flowing into
schools or mental health or any of the things that they're actually charged with doing. No, it's absolutely abhorrent, and the fact that we haven't connected that with the outcomes of people's quality of life here in Texas enough to vote those people out is the biggest conundrum of all. But I will tell you that it is incumbent upon us at every level of leadership to speak the truth, and sometimes speak the truth to power. And that's often used as speaking upward towards the people in government. But I'm also speaking about talking to our own residents, The power is in the people who elect folks to office. And we've got to make sure that we're speaking truth to power about the impact some of these people are having on your life. And that's not a partisan statement. But when we have $25+ billion of a surplus, yet we have people in office at the highest level blaming mental health for the latest mass shooting that occurs in our region, yet somehow figuring out how in that surplus to reduce per capita funding for mental health and public education, all these other things, somebody needs to be called out constantly. Just because we're an arm of the state doesn't mean we need to stand down. This is no time to be impartial as an elected official. And that's not just about senators and governors and presidents. It's also about local elected officials. We want to get things back on track nationally at the state level. People in party politics sometimes fail to recognize that none of that progress happens up there. It happens on the local ground in local neighborhoods. The march towards extremism is happening in neighborhoods. It's not happening, in the halls of Congress. It's because people lose faith in the fact that government can solve problems, cities, counties. And so solving problems and being a visible representative of the people is critically important. We need to have higher standards than just being a Democrat or a Republican holding an office. We've got to make sure that those Democrats and Republicans are focused on solving real problems and do that consistently, or this country is going to continue to go down the path it is. That's why I'm so interested in local government. That's where the problems get solved.
I would say one of the high points of your service as mayor in concert with Bexar County Judge Nelson Wolff was the leadership and management through the COVID pandemic, 2021 and 22. And I'm curious, county government now is an extension of state government, unlike municipal government. I wonder what lessons were learned from that or how that will influence your own ability to govern at the county level should you be elected, knowing that you are an extension of the state. We had to resist remarkable, what I would call anti-science opposition at the state level. They didn't want to mask. They didn't want to shut down. They were not enthusiastic about vaccination programs. Very disconcerting, actually, for people that are science-driven and fact-based.
Lots of lessons learned about communication, about being a united front, working together. Some of the other lessons learned were, number one, the actions of people in elected office are not always legal. When it comes to defending your residents' public health and lives, as we were doing constantly during the pandemic, sometimes the legality of what they're doing needs to be challenged. We can't accept at face value partisan actions related to the public health of people. That's one lesson. Nelson and I didn't always agree on everything, but we earned great mutual respect for the way we worked together as a team. We became friends during that process. Being in partnership with the mayor, with the county, with your colleagues on the court, with your colleagues on the council during the difficult times is extremely important. Those foundations are built when times are normal. You learn a lot about people when you're in the foxhole in the middle of dealing with a crisis. And I think we did much better than most in the country with respect to how we moved through that. But I will never forget what General Wanayala told me, and that is you don't exchange calling cards in the rubble. All the work we have to do to deal with the next disaster or emergency is happening right now. The preparation is happening right now. It's not a matter of if we will face another challenge, God willing, not as significant as COVID, but when we will experience another challenge. And so what are we doing to be prepared right now? Updating community risk assessments, making sure that there's proper collaboration, communication so that your colleagues in the court aren't feeling like they're on an island. Making sure we're finding efficiencies within the county's infrastructure and between cities and the county. All those things matter when it comes to being able to withstand the next emergency.
Our 2017 San Antonio Climate Action and Adaptation Plan to me has kind of been DOA, kind of sitting on the shelf. And I'm talking about every city in America.
Yeah.
We're just not moving forward toward those 2050 goals the way so many of us hoped we would.
I disagree with that premise. And a couple of things I would say. Number one, What we did recognize is that our hope for progress on any issue, but in particular climate change mitigation, is less important to people than whether or not they can survive. If you can't make the next meal, you're not going to be worried about climate change. We have to recognize that as a community. We have one of the most socially vulnerable communities in America. As it relates to our climate plan, how can we make progress, but also make sure it's built on equity so that the mitigation isn't most detrimental to the folks that can least afford it? We have made some changes. Would it be great to be more aggressive? Absolutely. But look at what we've done. We're ending the use of coal in this community 37 years ahead of schedule. We just opened it in 2010, and we're going to get rid of it next year, according to the plan we adopted. We also are accelerating a generation plan that is cognizant of the 2050 goals, but is building up capacity so that we're reducing emissions locally in real time. We have finally started mass transit in this community, which prior to 2017 was really a pipe dream. So there's a lot of things that we're doing that I think are poo-pooed by the real hardest core climate advocates. Mm-hmm. They're dismissed as meaningless. But what I will tell you is that's the foundation for change. And we will not even have a foundation established if we can't build it in a way that in a community where 25%, I should say, is living below the poverty line, that they have to choose between the cost of climate change mitigation or the next meal. That's not going to work. We would never get anywhere. So we're doing it in a way that is allowing us to make progress on those economic opportunity issues, but also make significant progress, in my opinion, on the climate change issues.
Vulnerabilities in our community are only more so exposed in time of crisis. One of the things that has been really wonderful about San Antonio is its livability, its affordability. And I think we are seeing some cautionary signals with that as our, our housing costs there's no city that's really escaping this trend nationally, but housing costs increasing, we're as well seeing the rates of folks experiencing homelessness increase. San Antonio's done better than other cities, or at least less bad, with different fresh eyes from the county judge's post. How do you look at essential infrastructure like that?
Yeah, some of it's structural, and I appreciate you pointing those out, Cory. And I can get super wonky on these because I'm very proud of some of the reports that came out in the Brookings Metro report that show that very slowly the trend has started to change in terms of poverty and socioeconomic inequity. Wage gap is shrinking. Poverty has come down consistently over the last two segments of the census. But all that, again, belies the experience that so many families are having. And statistics are meaningless if you're talking to a family that's struggling. So what I would say is that it is about what we're doing now to incentivize economic immobility, lack of quality infrastructure and essential services. Right now, we are incentivizing people to move to places because of near-term affordability that ultimately lead to the next generation's slums. In 2026 in Bexar County, people should have access to drive on paved roads to work. They should have running water and sanitation. They should have some basic essentials. We need to work together, cities and counties within the unincorporated area as well. We need to work together to figure out how to best deliver those services. Cost of service needs to be analyzed to ensure that we're not duplicating services and creating redundancies. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about with respect to a plan for growth, which is not happening currently. We're letting it happen the way it's always happened, but we need to be prepared because that's accelerating.
County government touches more of your daily life than most of us realize. The courts, healthcare, how growth gets planned or doesn't. And as this region keeps growing, the decisions being made at that level will shape what it feels like to live here for years to come. That's what makes conversations like this one worth having. Not to tell you how to vote, but to help you understand what's actually at stake. This episode was made possible with support from Geekdom, Weston Urban, and Plains Capital Bank. If you want to stay close to these conversations, you can sign up for our newsletters, my San Antonio Something, and Bob Rivard's Monday Musings. Links are in the description below, or you can head to bigcitysmalltown.com to sign up. Thanks for watching this episode of Big City Small Town. We'll see you next time.